You ever meet someone once and they somehow stay in your mind for years? You can't explain it. Maybe it was how they looked at you or how calm they were when everyone else seemed restless. They didn't say much. They didn't try too hard, but something about them lingered. That's power. And Machiavelli understood it better than anyone because he knew that the world doesn't remember the loud. It remembers the unforgettable. What makes someone unforgettable isn't chance. And it's not key charisma either. It's design. It's how they use perception. How they shape what people see, what they feel, and what they remember. The first rule of creating an unforgettable impression, Machiavelli would say, is understanding that people rarely see who you are. They only see what you allow them to. The world doesn't judge your depth, only your silhouette. So if you want to stay in someone's mind long after you've left the room, stop focusing on being genuine in the moral sense, and start focusing on being deliberately genuine in the strategic sense. Every glance, pause, and word should carry a reason. Here's where most people go wrong. They try to impress through effort. They talk too much, smile too wide, agree too easily, hoping to be liked. But when you chase being liked, you destroy the mystery that makes you memorable. Machiavelli knew that the most powerful figures in history didn't dominate by constantly performing. They dominated by withholding, by letting others fill in the blanks. The mind remembers mystery far more than it remembers clarity. When you explain everything about yourself, people stop thinking about you. When you reveal just enough to spark curiosity, their imagination does the rest. So if you walk into a room and want to leave an impression that lasts, don't announce yourself. Don't over-explain. Be the one who observes more than you speak. The moment you hold back while others rush to fill silence, your value multiplies. That silence, it's tension. And tension is what burns your image into people's memory. Machiavelli would tell you that first impressions are rarely about authenticity. They're about control. The person who controls the frame control show. Others interpret everything about them. Your presence should tell people how to treat you before you ever open your mouth. That means understanding the language of posture, stillness, and energy. You walk slowly. You look deliberately. You don't flinch when others break eye contact first. Every move should look like it cost you thought because that's what makes people. Assume you're thinking and people fear what they can't predict. But here's the paradox. If you appear too calculated, people feel manipulated. So the art lies in the subtle balance between effortless and intentional. The way to create that illusion is to prepare like a strategist, but act like a natural. Think through what impression you want to leave, then stop thinking entirely once you enter the room. Because true presence is felt when nothing about you feels forced. The truth is unforgettable. People trigger emotional contradictions. They make you feel safe and curious at the same time. They're confident but calm, approachable yet distant. You can't quite categorize them. And that's what keeps them alive in your head. This is what Machiavelli meant when he emphasized duality and influence. To impress deeply, you must embody two truths at once. Be warm, but only slightly. Be kind, but never eager. Be open, but never exposed. People with forgettable energy are predictable. They give away their emotional map in the first 5 minutes. But when your reactions are minimal, when your energy stays level, others start projecting qualities onto you. They'll say you're mysterious, intelligent, intimidating, or even arrogant. Let them. It's better to be misinterpreted than to be transparent. Transparency invites judgment. Mystery invites fascination. And fascination is the root of unforgettable impressions. Think about it. When someone leaves you puzzled, you keep replaying that encounter. You start assigning meaning to their every word and gesture. You begin to think about them when they're not even there. That's psychological real estate. And Machiavelli would call it the highest form of power. Because when someone's mind is occupied with you, they lose control of how they see you. Another thing that sets unforgettable people apart is precision. They never scatter their attention or energy. When they speak to you, you feel like you're the only one in the room. But that focus isn't emotional. It's strategic. It's so they make every interaction feel singular. Machiavelli would tell you that humans crave significance, and anyone who can make them feel significant even for a few seconds becomes unforgettable. But the trick is not to make everyone feel that way. You choose your moments, you choose your audience. Because what's rare becomes sacred. And here's a truth that most never realize. Being unforgettable doesn't require grand gestures or elaborate displays. In fact, it's often the small, disciplined choices that create the deepest impact. The way you pause before answering. The way you smile only once. The way you walk away first when a conversation feels complete. Each of these is a signal. One that says, I value my presence too much to waste it. And people sense that instinctively. Machiavelli observed that men remember offense more than kindness, but they respect restraint more than either. To make a lasting impression, you must learn the art of leaving people slightly unsatisfied, not disappointed but curious. Curiosity keeps your image alive long after you're gone. It's like giving them a taste of something rare, then closing the door. If they want more, you've already won. There's another layer most overlook. Emotional temperature. Unforgettable people know how to regulate it like a thermostat. They can shift from warmth to coolness without warning. They don't stay on one frequency long enough to be predictable. Machiavelli would say this unpredictability keeps others emotionally invested. When someone can't read you, they pay closer attention. And attention is power. But there's the catch. You can't fake it with overacting. Emotional control isn't about pretending not to care. It's about mastering your internal rhythm so thoroughly that nothing external throws you off balance. When your energy feels unshakable, others instinctively assume you have something they don't. That assumption becomes admiration, then respect. If you think about all the people who left marks on history, the ones who are remembered not just for what they did but for how they were, you'll notice the same pattern. They were composed under chaos. They never revealed their full mind. They knew when to speak and when to vanish. Machiavelli admired that kind of discipline because it was the foundation of authority, and that's another key. Unforgettable impressions aren't built in personality. They're built on presence. Personality fades when you leave the room. Presence stays behind. The question you should ask yourself isn't how can I make them like me? It's how can I make them feel me? Because emotions outlast logic. People may forget what you said, but they'll never forget how your presence changed the atmosphere. That's why true influence begins before words are even spoken. The most Machiavellian move you can make is to learn the invisible art of psychological theater, the ability to manipulate perception without appearing to. When you step into a space, people are already forming stories about you. Every second they spend trying to interpret you strengthens your power, because attention is currency and you're the one they're spending it on. Most people enter a room trying to find comfort. You should enter trying to create gravity. Let people orbit you, not the other way around. This doesn't mean arrogance. It means embodying quiet authority. Walk as if you know where you belong, even if no one else does. When you carry yourself like that, others assume your value before they even verify it. But if you really want to know the secret behind unforgettable impressions, it's this. They're not about performance. They're about consistency. You can't be mysterious one day and needy the next. Your silence must feel natural. Your poise must feel permanent. People sense when your demeanor is rehearsed versus lived. So practice it until it's no longer practice. Machiavelli warned that people are quick to forget those who blend in. The human mind deletes what doesn't provoke emotion. So every move you make should either disturb, inspire, or intrigue. Neutrality kills memory. Even a subtle contradiction, a calm tone with sharp eyes, a kind word with an unreadable expression can anchor you in someone's mind for life. Because you've created emotional dissonance, and dissonance demands resolution. To create unforgettable impressions effortlessly, you have to master contrast. Be both light and shadow, warmth and restraint, familiarity and distance. People remember the ones who made them feel more than they expected. And to do that, you must think like a strategist and move like an artist. Because the truth is, being unforgettable isn't about trying harder. It's about understanding deeper. It's not about changing who you are. It's about controlling what parts of yourself the world gets to see. Machiavelli knew that presence, not power, is the real throne. And once you learn to rule perception, you never have to chase respect again. The second secret to creating unforgettable impressions isn't in what you show. It's in what you withhold. Most people are obsessed with making others see how good, interesting, or capable they are. But that obsession only makes them predictable. The more you reveal, the less there is to wonder about. Machiavelli understood that mystery is not a trait, it's a strategy. The less people know, the more they invent. And people never forget what their own imagination created. When you meet someone who leaves a deep impression, it's rarely because they told you everything about themselves. It's because they told you just enough. A single intriguing detail, a strange contradiction, something that doesn't quite add up. It makes you think about them even when they're not around. That's the kind of impression that doesn't fade. At first, so how to use this intentionally? By creating what Machiavelli would call controlled ambiguity. You give people information in fragments, never in full. When they ask about your life, you answer partially. When they expect you to explain your choices, you offer philosophy instead of justification. You turn direct questions into opportunities for reflection. This forces people to see you as more than you are. They start assuming depth even where none exists. Because humans hate unanswered questions and their curiosity becomes your silent ally. But here's where mastery begins. Being unforgettable is not about being silent or cold. It's about creating emotional friction. Think about the last person you couldn't get out of your head. They didn't just make you feel good. They made you feel conflicted, confused, curious. That emotional imbalance is the hook. Machiavelli knew that people remember tension far longer than they remember harmony. If you want to stay in someone's mind, you must awaken two opposite emotions at once. Respect and discomfort, attraction and uncertainty, admiration and intimidation. That's what creates the magnetic pull of unforgettable presence. When people can't fully figure you out, they keep trying, and that continuous mental effort makes you part of their thoughts. It's how kings, seducers, and leaders stay unforgettable, not by being understood, but by being studied. Now, to create this effortlessly, your actions must look natural, even when they're calculated. Machiavelli would say that deliberate simplicity can be more powerful than overt sophistication, because people expect effort to be visible, but when they sense effortless command, they assume greatness. It's why someone who speaks few words can dominate a room full of talkers, why a quiet smirk can silence noise faster than a speech. It's because effort betrays need and need erases power. So before you walk into a room, remind yourself your goal isn't to be liked, it's to be felt. The people who are remembered aren't necessarily the most charming. They're the most centered. When your energy doesn't chase approval, it naturally commands it. It's the paradox Machiavelli always hinted at. Power comes to those who act as if they already have it. One of the greatest ways to cement an impression is to become memorable through precision. Choose your words like a blade. Say only what matters because the mind assigns more weight to what is scarce. When you speak less, your words sound like verdicts. And when you move deliberately, your gestures look intentional even when they're not. This gives your entire presence a gravity that others subconsciously respect. But there's a deeper psychological layer. Most never touch. Timing. Unforgettable people understand rhythm. They don't rush responses. They let silence do some of the work. Every pause amplifies what comes after it. Every delay creates suspense. Machiavelli would call this the tempo of authority. The ability to control how fast the world moves around you. When everyone else is reactive, your calm becomes hypnotic. People lean toward you just to feel steadier. That's why one of the most effective Machiavellian tactics is to slow down what others speed up. When someone pressures you for an answer, don't rush. When chaos rises, lower your tone. You're teaching the room to adapt to your rhythm. And once that happens, you own their focus. Still, presence without precision is wasted. To make people remember you, you need contrast. You can't always be mysterious. You must also know when to strike. A well-timed truth, an unexpected compliment, or a piercing observation can create a mark that lasts for years. When you reveal something real but only once, people feel privileged to have seen it. That sense of rarity is what brands your impression into their mind. Think of it like a painting. Too much detail and the image becomes cluttered. Too little and it feels incomplete. But just the right balance of exposure and shadow and it becomes unforgettable. You are the painter of your own presence. Every gesture, every silence, every look adds or subtracts color from the picture people see. The secret is to know when to stop painting. And while others think charisma comes from speaking, well, Machiavelli would say it comes from making people feel something about themselves. When you speak, frame your words in a way that makes others reflect. Ask them the kind of questions that echo in their mind hours later. People will remember you not because you impressed them, but because you made them think differently about who they are. That's how influence becomes emotional memory. Yet, there's a warning here. You can't become unforgettable if you constantly seek attention. The spotlight must chase you, not the other way around. Attention that is earned feels magnetic. Attention that is begged for feels desperate. So you must learn the art of graceful withdrawal, knowing when to leave, when to stay silent, when to walk away while curiosity is still alive. That's how you build myth. The ones who linger too long always lose their aura. Unforgettable impressions depend on controlled scarcity. When you become too available, you lose your edge. Machiavelli understood that absence is as powerful as presence. The greatest way to make someone crave your presence is to remove it before they've had enough. Leave people with questions, not conclusions. Disappear at your peak and your image will live longer than your presence ever could. But beneath all this strategy lies something simpler: consistency. You cannot be magnetic one day and scattered the next. You must embody your presence, not perform it. Machiavelli warned that people quickly detect inconsistency, and once your image cracks, it never repairs the same. So train your demeanor until composure becomes your nature. Let your calm become instinct, not effort. Because the mind remembers what feels real. To create unforgettable impressions effortlessly, you must stop trying to manipulate reactions and start mastering the environment within you. When your thoughts, gestures, and tone all align, people feel it. They might not know why, but they'll remember you because energy speaks before language does. There's a quiet strength in being the one who doesn't flinch, doesn't overshare, doesn't rush to fill silence. That restraint is what Machiavelli called invisible authority. The ability to dominate without appearing dominant. It's a presence that says, I know who I am, and I don't need your validation to prove it. And that more than charm is what makes a person unforgettable. When you leave a room, don't ask yourself if people liked you. Ask if they felt you. If the energy shifted when you entered, if the silence after you left felt heavier, because that's the sign that your impression has entered their subconscious. And once it's there, it never leaves. Most people think unforgettable impressions are born in moments of grandeur, big speeches, powerful gestures, striking beauty. But Machiavelli knew it's the opposite. The deepest impressions are created in small moments. The pauses between words, the glance that lasts a second longer than comfort allows, the refusal to react when everyone else is desperate to. True presence doesn't scream. It whispers in a way that people can't stop hearing. You can tell a forgettable person by how they behave under pressure. Their emotions leak through their expressions. Their tone rises. Their focus scatters. But when you face tension and remain composed, it burns an image into people's memory. The image of control. Machiavelli wrote that control is the foundation of power and power is the root of memory. People remember those who don't get shaken because unshakable people are rare. That's why you must learn to use restraint as performance. When someone insults you and you smile, it unsettles them. When others rush to explain themselves and you stay silent, it shifts the balance. Every time you don't react, you reinforce the impression that you are above the moment. People may not understand why they feel smaller around you, but they'll feel it and that feeling stays. Machiavelli believed that the most powerful figures mastered not dominance, but composure. Anyone can be loud. Few can stay calm. That calm is magnetic because it implies something hidden, something stronger than emotion. The secret is not to be unaffected, but to be unrevealing. People can sense emotion in your eyes or your posture, but they shouldn't be able to name it. The moment they can define you, they can dismiss you. So your goal isn't to hide emotion, it's to blur it. Let them sense warmth without knowing if it's friendliness or confidence. Let them sense danger without knowing if it's anger or power. Ambiguity creates fascination, and fascination creates memory. Machiavelli understood this as psychological warfare. When people can't label you, their minds can't file you away. You become something they must keep rethinking. The next layer is something most never consider. Tempo of connection. Most people rush intimacy. They try to build rapport quickly, reveal stories fast, create comfort instantly. But fast connection rarely lasts because it lacks depth. Unforgettable people move slow. They reveal themselves inch by inch, creating emotional suspense. Each new revelation feels like a reward, and humans value what they must earn. Machiavelli would say, make people work to know you. The harder they work, the deeper you sink into their memory. And remember this, consistency builds trust, but contrast builds intrigue. If you want to be unforgettable, you need both. Your presence must feel stable enough to be respected, but unpredictable enough to be exciting. If people can predict how you'll respond, they'll stop watching. But if you surprise them, not by extremes, but by subtle shifts, they'll stay alert around you. Alertness means attention, and attention is the soil where memory grows. Sometimes being unforgettable is as simple as having a distinct energy. The tone of your voice, the rhythm of your words, the way you occupy space. These are your signatures. Refine them. Never copy anyone else's rhythm. It dilutes you. Machiavelli would say of an imitation must look original. The world has countless loud personalities, but very few resonant ones. Find your resonance, your emotional frequency, and protect it. Here's what most people never realize. Unforgettable impressions aren't always positive. Sometimes being feared or misunderstood makes you just as memorable. Machiavelli was ruthless about this truth. He said it's better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But in modern terms, it means this. Never dilute your identity for universal approval. The moment you try to please everyone, you become no one. People don't remember what blends in. They remember what disturbs them slightly. Even in subtle ways, your tone, your words, your lack of apology, people should feel that you are unbothered by their opinions. That kind of psychological independence is magnetic because it's rare. Everyone's desperate to be validated. When you act like you don't need it, people start seeking your validation instead. That's the silent reversal of power. Machiavelli would tell you that lasting impressions are built not on the surface but on what others feel about themselves around you. If your presence makes them feel smarter, calmer, or more powerful, they'll remember you positively. But if your presence makes them question their own confidence, they'll remember you intensely. Both work. Your goal isn't to control whether you're liked, it's to control whether you're forgettable. Another dimension of being unforgettable lies in how you exit. The last impression often becomes the longest. Most people don't realize when they have overstayed a moment. They linger until the energy drops. But Machiavelli would say, leave before they expect you to. Walk away when your presence still feels valuable. That's how myths are created. By disappearing before satisfaction. Even in conversation, this principle applies. And with a question that lingers, a statement that provokes, something that doesn't tie up neatly. People remember unfinished sentences more than they remember complete ones because the mind hates incompletion. You don't have to deliver closure. You have to deliver curiosity. When you operate like this consistently, your reputation starts working for you. People will start describing you in paradoxes. They'll say you're calm but intense, warm but distant, kind but intimidating. That confusion is your signature. It means you've transcended labels. And when people can't label you, they can't limit you. That's when you become unforgettable. In truth, Machiavelli's philosophy on impressions wasn't about deception. It was about awareness. He believed that every interaction is a small battlefield of perception. The wise don't fight for dominance. They manipulate the terrain. You win not by force, but by anticipation. You enter every encounter knowing the emotional tone you want to leave behind. You use silence when others use sound. You use presence when others use persuasion. Being unforgettable then isn't about chasing admiration. It's about designing experience. Every person you meet should walk away feeling something distinct, something they can't quite explain. You control this not through constant attention, but through emotional precision. You decide when to look, when to speak, when to pause, when to vanish. That's how you bend memory itself. So ask yourself, what does your silence say about you? What does your stillness communicate when words fail? Because in a world addicted to noise, it's not the loudest who are remembered. It's Theones whose quiet lingers. And maybe that's the final Machiavellian secret. Unforgettable people don't try to be unforgettable. They simply act with such purpose, such calm intensity that others can't help but remember. Every room they enter feels slightly different after they leave. Every word they speak echoes longer than its sound. That is how to create unforgettable impressions effortlessly, not through effort but through mastery of presence, through control of what others feel in your silence, through the deliberate art of being known without ever being fully understood.